Right, let's keep this as uncut and unfiltered as possible. So, I said a couple of days ago that I wanted to finally make a confession video of sorts about my why, because a lot of people have already seen the how. You know, if you've been following my journey on social media, then you've probably seen the how. And maybe in future I'll make a video on the how, but I don't think the how is as important as the why. Because I feel that the why has made me the person that I have become now. So a lot of people ask me that, well, I think they ask me why and how I am able to fit in everything that I do in a day. But I don't think that's an important enough question as why I feel the need to run so much. And what's my story? Because the other day I was listening on the radio and there was another beauty queen who was talking about her skin condition and saying that that's what drove her to want to fight for what she's fighting for right now, you know, trying to get women to accept themselves as they are, etc., etc. Even Huda Beauty, if you guys know her, she was on the This Morning show recently talking about how, in her perception, she was an ugly kid, and that's what drove her to love makeup. So I was just thinking about where it all started for me and what's made me the person I've become. It's going to be a difficult one. And I'm going to try to be as honest as I can be. And I hope this story doesn't make me seem like I'm asking for sympathy in any way, because that's who I used to be, that's my past, and what I am now is different. And I no way am sorry for what happened, because everything in my past, everything in my life has led me to be here. I bet you guys are expecting some really interesting story. It's not particularly interesting in that way. There wasn't a lot of drama per se, but I just thought some of you might be able to relate to this story, and even if you don't relate, then, you know, maybe you can learn something from it. So this is going back a few many years. If you don't know, then you don't know, but if you know, then you know that I moved to this country when I was 9 years old. And I remember exactly. And this is the thing, as a child, as a 9-year-old kid, your wants and expectations from life are very small. You don't even think the practicality of your dreams that you have. And I remember in school, growing up in India, thinking that I'm going to become a astronaut, and that's where, I don't know where I got the idea from. I think it was Tom and Jerry, but anyway, that's irrelevant. And I never grew up thinking that I'm underprivileged in any way. You know, there were a lot of children in my school itself who were better off than me and my family, and vice versa, you know. And I think that's the general rule in life. There's always going to be someone better. There's always going to be someone worse off than you. So as a kid, you don't think about these things. You don't think about discrimination at all. I mean, yes, I grew up thinking I wanted something that my friends had and I didn't have it. And I remember just creating a world of my own, and in my imaginary world those things existed, or I made them a reality from the things around me. But when I found out I was going to move here with my family, I remember the first thing that I was excited about, and the only thing I was happy and excited about, was to be able to use a clean toilet that wasn't going to have shit smeared all over the walls. and overflowing from every direction with water and shit and piss and God knows what else. Sorry, mind my language. And you think that's something we take for granted every day. But I remember that was my only thing that I was looking forward to, moving to UK. And when we moved to the UK, that's when I realised that, I was privileged. I had a realisation, or I don't know, someone told me, I can't remember, but there was a notion with my family there and otherwise that I had been able to escape, and everybody else that I had grown up with there, they had to be stuck there with that reality. And no one bothered to tell that 9-year-old kid that no one's life is 100% miserable, and that just because I'd been able to get out of that environment, it wouldn't mean that everybody back there was going to have a shit life and I was going to have this life of a queen. That wasn't true, because the struggles that I had and I underwent with my family, and I saw my family undergo after we moved here as new immigrants, no one said that that's actually a struggle. And I kept thinking in my head all along that my life that I have is a privilege. I'm lucky and those people are not. And there was always a sense of competition in my head that I had to make use of all the resources that I had. I remember being so grateful for everything. I remember being like, and I'm not regretful of this, because that's the person I became and that's the person my mum's brought me up to be grateful for everything and make use of everything. My mum had told me at a young age to be productive, to use every hour of the day productively, and I still stick by that rule. But anyway, I'm not sure if this is every immigrant story, but this is the story of many immigrants. And I don't think a lot of people think about this, but maybe if you ask your grandparents, if you're an immigrant yourself, if your family is an immigrant themselves, if you ask them, then you'd know the struggles that immigrant families go through. And we might ignore it about the UK, but the UK has a very large population that have immigrated here, and they go through struggles every day. When you immigrate from a country, you leave behind your home, you leave behind everything. We didn't bring any money with us. And my family, however much dignity, respect, anything that we had back in India, we were at the bottom of the pile when we came here. And my mum knew that. And she's told us on the first day to just because we were in a financial crisis, she just said, just pray that, please pray to God that we don't have to look back and we don't have to go back. Because all you care about is face saving. You've moved to a new country. It's about survival. You don't move somewhere to go back. You don't take a step forward to just turn back. So yes, and the struggles of being at the bottom of the pile meant, well, apart from the fact that, facing racism, I don't think that was even the start of the struggles. That wasn't that big of a deal, because I didn't know any better. I just knew that was a reality, and that's just something I'd have to deal with. I didn't know that was a wrong thing, that I could have stood up for it and fought it. But anyway, I remember growing up having to share my bed, having to share my room, living in there was quite a few points through the initial years of us moving here where we couldn't afford more than one room, and we all stayed in one room. That's 5 people in one room. And there was times, getting goosebumps now, There was times when we stayed in places with other immigrants. I remember being in the bathroom, closing my eyes so I didn't have to look around at the mold and how disgusting the dirty bathrooms used to be. Some of the places that we stayed at. My mom was working, full time, and I just remember creating a bubble for myself. And that bubble for me was books, where I could escape into an imaginary world. And also school. I just made academia my priority. I think that was the start where I decided, every child makes their own escapism and creates their own little universe of, alternate reality. That was my reality. But I remember being a kid and finding ways and finding excuses to not invite people home, to not, and I remember non-uniform days. I remember this non-uniform day very distinctly. And I went to a school, I went to a couple of different schools. I went to 4 or 5 different primary schools because we kept moving a lot. And this particular school, they had non-uniform, they had no uniforms. We didn't wear uniforms at all. But there was I think it was World Book Day, where you had to dress up as a character. And I remember not having any clothes for that. So I just went dressed up in my normal clothes. And I remember this kid saying to me, "Pasha, what have you come dressed up as? A tramp? Oh, you're just wearing your normal clothes. Oh, you've come dressed up as a tramp, haven't you?" Yeah. I'm just finding different excuses to not, because, kids, though, in primary school, they have sleepovers. I didn't ever invite anybody home. And if I did, or even if I played outside, I'd make excuses about why there were all these other people living in the same house as me, and just stupid excuses like that, because I didn't even have my own room. I shared the same room as my parents and my siblings. That's it. And that was my reality. I think I had 4 or 5 clothes, all from charity shops. The irony is that now I can make a joke of it. I can show off about it. I can say, "Hey, guess how much this was? 50p." Because I'm still shopping in charity shops. But there was a time when that was all my affordability was. Our affordability was. And I have no shame in that now. But then I did. And we used to go to car boot sales and buy from there. And try to being on trend when you're living off other people's hand-me-downs is really difficult. I just remember being so grateful for it all. Because in my head, all through, I thought I was privileged as compared to the people I grew up with. And that was utterly untrue, because that's not how the world runs, first of all. My family back in India did not have the same economic background as we did in this country. They were educated. And I think that's where the struggle was, to humble yourself and see your parents, see your mum work, being a postgraduate and have to work in a factory or something like that, and just and still be told by everyone, every time I went back to India, still be told how privileged I am, when that wasn't the reality. People see just part of it, and they think they don't see your reality at all. Anyway, so yeah, being called a tramp at school, not being able to invite anyone home. I remember being at Tesco one time, and this kid saw us shopping, literally pointed out in front of my family, oh look, it's all value for Pasha, it's all value, Tesco value for Pasha, because everything in our shopping cart was Tesco value. And if you know, Tesco values, I don't think if it exists anymore, but back then Tesco value was literally the cheapest thing you could get. Yeah. And then we moved to Derby. To this day, I mean, only 2 years ago did I move into this house, but to this day, my best friend hasn't visited my house. I didn't ever invite anybody home again, because we lived in a terraced house. Our street was possibly, if not the most, one of the highest crime zone streets in the whole of Derby. And people would talk about it. They would say about, oh, did you hear that person get arrested on that street? There were police cars going in and out of our street all the time. There was a park in front of our house that my brother couldn't go to play at because they were always doing drugs there. And I grew up there. I remember starting Guzz up there, having these doctors bring their kids over to my house, do their dance practice and things like that. And the way they looked at it in a sense of, oh, I feel for you, sympathy, and overcompensating so much. Every time anyone came over, going crazy to clean up the inside, to overcompensate for the area we lived in, to overcompensate the street I lived on, and telling people lies about, oh, how we used to have a different house, which was a better house, but actually we moved here for this reason, or we were supposed to move there. I said so many lies in my lifetime just to sort of justify living in the area that we did, or justify why my mum works in Primark, minimum wage, despite being educated. I remember telling people how educated she is, or whatever, and how much she sacrificed, essentially. She sacrificed her whole career and everything, just for us, for me. But throughout growing up, the one thing that pushed me was that at each point I made a step forward, it was about never looking back. And I just had this crazy obsession that I had to make use of my privileges and overcompensate so that everyone would look at me for my grades, for something else, and not ask about where I lived, not ask about what my mum did, what my dad did, or whatever, And there were loads of those questions all throughout, and I didn't have good enough answers for those questions. And at this point in my life, I find myself in that same scenario where I'm running. It's a fight or flight response to crisis. I'm not going to talk about what the crisis is now, but let's just say in all these last years that whatever we've built is on the verge of being taken away from us. Very unfair means, but that's the truth. I don't need to go into much detail, but it feels like starting at the bottom of the pile again. It feels like it did when we moved here to the UK for the first time, when we felt that everything that of our life that was before, all our achievements, everything that my mum had built in India, that wasn't going to make any difference. That wasn't going to play any part in anything. Like, no one's going to ever know or respect us extra for it or anything like that, for whatever we'd achieved before. Imagine achieving so much and for that all to be taken away from you. Start from scratch again. And then you build it up again and that gets taken away from you again. My why is that I want now, at least, all throughout it's been, I just want for my mum and my brother to never have to look back, to never have to ever see those days again. Even though a couple of months ago we were discussing moving back into rented property, or living or sharing homes again with other people. I said to my mum, we can't do that. I don't care what it takes. I don't care how hard we have to work. And we are. If you knew us in real life, then you'd know that my objective and my why is that I don't ever want to look back. And my why is that I always felt privileged. I always felt grateful for what I had. And I don't regret that at all, because that notion made me appreciate the little things in life and want to make best use of everything around me, because I realized and I had seen how it would be to go back, or what it's like to grow up underprivileged. And I just didn't. And every time I took a step forward, I knew that I couldn't go back. Therefore, I must make best use of what I have now. I must keep moving forward. I must strive. I must run and just keep moving forward. And I think that's something that everyone can learn from, because sometimes we find ourselves being ungrateful and feeling sorry for ourselves and not realizing the bigger picture, and not realizing that there are people around us coexisting in the same universe that are worse off than us. Equally, there are better off people, and also what we have right now can get taken away. And how would you feel to start from scratch all over again every time? And I think one truly starts to appreciate what one has when that thing gets threatened. When the notion of losing what you have comes about, that's when you appreciate what you have. So that is my why. Because I have seen my family start from scratch over and over again. And I couldn't turn back. I couldn't go back to what I'd seen. Bearing in mind, what I'm telling you is just a part of the story. There's more to it, more I'd like to say, but yeah, that's my why. Being called a tramp, having 5 pairs of clothes in my wardrobe. That wasn't even a wardrobe, it used to be a plastic bag, because we moved around so many houses. I remember having just one of those big, Aldi bags or something like that, and having to be able to squish everything into one of those. And that's it, that's all we had. Library books, appreciating the privilege of being able to read without a cost, appreciating, I appreciated my school so much, I appreciated my teachers so much, because I'd seen what it's like to grow up in a school where teachers don't care about you, or whatever, or I'd seen what it's like to have to pay for everything, and, all the rest of it. There's so much that we don't appreciate. So from being an immigrant, from growing up in a room, sharing a room with the rest of my family, 5 people in one room, to now being in the finals for Miss England, I can only be grateful. And I know that I don't want to turn back. And that's what makes me want to do something with my title, because I know what I've received and what I've got is not something everyone can get. And I'd say I've had an exponential growth in my life, an exponential curve at least. And I say that my why has made me have that growth. If I didn't have that trigger, if I didn't feel like I had to compensate for what I didn't have, I wouldn't have worked so hard and tried so hard. So yes, I don't know if this is interesting at all, a story for you guys, but just want you guys to respect and appreciate the little things around you, and to appreciate that they might be taken away from you at any given point, and that what you have, there is so much you can do with. My mum taught me that. There's an innumerable amount of ways you can sort of be creative, and creativity comes, so necessity is the mother of invention. When the need arises, the human mind can be so creative and so inventive in working out ways to survive, and that's the survival instinct that people are lacking these days, because they lead a too comfortable a life. I think I stopped growing a couple of years ago because I got too comfortable. And now that that threat has come back in my life of losing everything, I'm back in my survival instinct and wanting to run and wanting to conquer and wanting to never look back. So I think it's a good thing, everything that happened. Anyway, thank you for listening, guys. And I hope this has been an interesting story for you guys. Keep supporting me, and I wish you all so much love and so much growth and so much well-being. Mwah.